Hello, everybody. My name is Graham Elwood, and you are watching The Political Vigilante. Look at that graphic. The power of the political vigilante coming through your screen, bringing vegan guns and justice on a bed of shaved knuckles. We've talked about private prisons on this show, right? We've talked about how awful they are, and I always talk about follow the money, connect the dots, right? So this was sent to me by a Patreon supporter, Justine Johansson. Justine, thank you so much for supporting the show. You can support the show the same way Justine does by going to patreon.com/Graham Elwood. Also, rockfin.com/Graham Elwood. So this is about the University of Mississippi. But this is going to show you how this corporate state, how the kleptocracy works, and how you can push back in this whole story. This might just be one region, one college in one state, but this is happening all over the place, and the solution can be applied everywhere. University of Mississippi, fires history professor who criticizes powerful racist donors and carceral state. During a period of what University of Mississippi faculty are calling a time of increasing paranoia, the university is set to terminate a celebrated professor of history. A termination letter was sent to Dr. Garrett Felber, a tenure-track assistant professor in the Arch Delempe III Department of History. Oh, is he just some upstart causing problems? No, I'm going to show you in a sec. He's pretty established, published author, which, as they say in the university world, it's publish or perish. Dr. Felber has undertaken an intimate study of the American carceral state and dedicates much of his time to educating and empowering those who are imprisoned in the United States. If you watch the documentary 13th Amendment, they talk about how the 13th Amendment basically just kept slavery going and made it so you could imprison black men very easily. And they mention Mississippi, which has a huge prison population, right? Mississippi that also just voted to pass marijuana and Jim Crow laws, but also very red state. But this author, so if you want to do a little more research, watch that documentary, 13th Amendment. Those who don't know, don't say. The Nation of Islam, the Black Freedom Movement, and the Carceral State, Garrett Felber. This is his book, which I've not read, but this might be why. And we're going to look at some of I wonder who some of the donors are, the University of Mississippi. Maybe private prisons are donating. Maybe just, it's Mississippi. He's saying there's racist donors. So just old racist donors that don't like books like this. Because what happened recently, what happened this year in Mississippi? The state inked a deal to house Parchman. That's a state-funded prison, inmates in a private prison. Is it legal? This came out in January, just about a year ago. Mississippi lacking guards sends inmates to private prisons. The conditions were so horrible that the prisoners had an uprising. The guards couldn't handle it, so they sent them to a private prison. So the way the private prison industry works is it needs money, right? So it needs prisoners. So like a black man on the street has no value. A black man behind bars gets $40,000 a year. The private prison industry makes that much money. Do you see how this works? That's why the private prison industry needs prisoners. And that's why an authoritarian fascist state, which is what America is. We are not a representative democracy. You are living an illusion if you think that. We are a kleptocracy run by oligarchs, right? So one of the things that happens in authoritarian states, Chris Hedges talks about this, is the utter crushing of critical thinking. You can't have a well-informed, well-educated population that is capable of critical thinking. You can't have that when you're an authoritarian fascist state, because then you can't get away with all your evil bullshit. So this is one way to do it. So this professor that writes this book and works and read the whole article and go into his book and see, he does stuff, programs with prisoners, educates them on how the system is screwing them over, has talked about this numerous times. I mean, let's read the title of his book again. Those who know don't say: The Nation of Islam, Black Freedom Movement, and the Carceral State. Oh, problem. So this narrative, oh, the government-run prisons are a joke. We need private prisons. We've heard this narrative before. Oh, the Postal Service is just a train wreck. It's only so the 1% can profit. But specifically to private prisons, it is racist and it is modern-day slavery. The documentary 13th Amendment proves it. But here's what gets even interesting. The history department chair, Dr. Noel Wilson, publicly praised Felber. She praised this man. She said, Garrett is an indefatigable researcher and community builder. So she's saying he's a top shelf researcher, which in the academia world, my father was a college professor, your research is that determines who you are. So if you got really strong bulletproof research, you can back everything up. Well, I researched this, I researched that. That's how I can prove this. Right? So if you cut corners on research or whatever, that's how people can poke holes in your thesis, right? So that's what this is high praise in the world of academia. I'm just letting you know that as the son of a college professor who had a PhD, I understand how serious, like how big this is. So I want you to point out this chairwoman is giving him high praise at this date in this quote. Community builder whose knowledge of the carceral state stems not merely from archival digging, but also from volunteer engagement with prisons as a teacher. That's what Wilson said in October. Then something changed, because in December, she sent him a pack your shit letter. But in December 10th letter, Wilson told Felber that his last day as a tenure-track professor at the University of Mississippi will be December 31st, 2021. So he's got a year. They're giving his walking papers in a year. So if I understand correctly, the University of Mississippi does not want somebody on their faculty that does this kind of work, because she praised him and then said, pack it. Here's an empty box and a note. Pack your shit. You're amazing, not only just as a researcher, but the community work you're doing as a volunteer, engagements with prisoners as a teacher. Wow. That's something that if you want to study the broken prison system, come to the University of Mississippi, because we have professors not just teaching in a classroom, but getting their hands dirty. That's what a quote like this would say. Like if you're a young person, let's say you watch the movie 13th Amendment, you're like, I want to get involved in reshaping our prison. I want prison reform. Well, I'm going to go to University of Mississippi because they have a professor there who's really on it. Right? That's what that helps. And that's what colleges need, is enrollment. That's kind of what they used to need. Now they're so dependent upon big donors that enrollment is also kind of like part of it, but not the main gravy train. So it used to be like, we need enrollment. And we get enrollment by showing we have these great professors that have all these, colleges always say, oh, we have this many Nobel Peace Prize winners and this many, Nobel laureate economists. And we have all these, winners of all these prestigious academic awards. That's on our faculty. So hey, parent paying college, your child is going to get a top shelf education. Not so much anymore. Now they just got to appease the donors, which is what that was about. And then she gives this jive ass nonsense. Wilson referred frequently to what she claims is Felber's refusal to speak with her. Well, I don't know that I would make that claim against someone that you claim is an amazing researcher, because they're going to come back and just go, oh, emails between the department chair and professor, who is currently living in Oregon during the pandemic, show that Felber and Wilson communicated multiple times throughout November and December. Wilson also communicated with Felber through an administrative assistant. It's so disprovable. He didn't communicate with me. Do you not know how email works? Like, we all have a record of it. He's just too hard to communicate. They'd play. So he's so amazing, but now suddenly he's some bad communicator. But that's a lie. Because she gave that glowing quote came on October 9th, just to give you a quick timeline. Then there was this grant, right? That Felber got rejected, and he said on his Twitter, this is what happened. This is really what gets down to it. Felber announced in his Twitter feed that Wilson had rejected a $42,000 grant to the department was awarded for a program called Study and Struggle, which is like a hands-on helping prisoners, right? And I know there's a lot of language there, so I'm going to just get through it. But Felber tweeted that Wilson communicated to him that the project was political rather than historical. Oh, he's being too political. Really? And could harm, listen to this, the department's ability, could potentially harm history department's ability to procure funding. That's what this is about. What do I say in the show? Follow the money. And you might be like, well, Graham, this is just one little university. But this is the same tactic they use everywhere, not just at universities. And they always contradict themselves. According to that thread, this rejection came 2 days after the university publicized a $57,000 grant from FWD.US, an organization funded by technology companies that focuses on immigration and prison system reforms. So this is somehow this $57,000 grant. And I went to their website. You know, they're talking about abolishing ICE and immigration reform. So that's not political. 57 grand to this is very political. But it's the specific type that Felber wanted. That's what hurt the donors, because some donors are like, no, we don't like this guy. And Felber called them out. That's what happened, because this grant is very political. It's just as political, if not more so political, than the one Felber wanted. But his was denied. His was denied because he says shit like this. The real issue is that prioritizes racist donors over all else. I mean, this is Mississippi, man, that had, the Confederate flags all over the place. Isn't it part of their flag? So it's not some mythic politics versus history binary, but that this anti-racist program threatens racist donor money. Follow the money, connect the dots. And racism is the brand. It's in the name. So I talk about direct actions on this show. I talk about boycotts and general strikes. So how is this guy? Is this, it's just some little problem in Mississippi. It doesn't concern us. Oh, it's Mississippi's problem. No. Following the publication of the following story about Dr. Felber's termination, several prominent writers and scholars, including Kaniga Yamitha Taylor, Cornell West, and Walter Johnson, pledged to boycott involvement with the University of Mississippi until there is a full public accounting of his firing. That's what you got to do. You want Cornel West to speak at your university? Well, he's not when you fire professors like that. This is the only power and leverage that we have. Cornel West is a professor at Harvard University and is a big time public figure. Totally unrelated story. University reaches 3-year high in fundraising. August 2020, faculty, staff, and students benefit from $127.2 million in gifts. And as Felber said, a lot of those donors are full-on racists. And they're okay with a private prison system that basically enslaves black men. And anyone who's poor, basically. Black men, for sure, more than anyone else. Black and brown people, more than anyone else. Native American, absolutely. Latino, absolutely. But anyone who's poor. You don't think the private prison industry, at the very least, has benefited from the opioid epidemic? Oh, wow. Now we got white people and I am getting busted on drug offenses. Now, wow, that's got to be good for the private prison industry. All these protests in the streets and the cops just beating the shit and doing whatever the hell they want. Well, lock them up. That's get some private prison money. It's big business, man. It's big business. And what's happening here at Ole Miss can happen and has happened at any university. So you look at the big endowments and the big foundations of these big universities. That's where you follow. That's where the power is. That's when you see like, oh, why is this former intelligence officer now on the board at this big prominent university? It's also, look, universities aren't the like bastion of free thinking anymore. None of our schools are. It's more programming. They don't want critical thinking. They don't want you reading that Dr. Felber's book that does all this research and shows how the private prison industry is just basically profiting from modern day slavery. Prisons aren't to reform people. When you have a for-profit motive in anything, that's it. It's not reforming people. It's like for-profit healthcare. It's why we need to force the vote. Because healthcare is a right. We should just be about how do we help people? How do we cure diseases? Well, when you have big pharmaceutical companies in there, they don't want cures for diseases. Look, the head of Goldman Sachs said several years ago in a speech that curing diseases is bad for business. We don't want cures. We just want people to take medication to treat the disease. Because if you just get a cure, we get one shot and the disease is gone. Well, then now you're not buying prescriptions for years on end. It's the same model as private prisons. If we get rid of poverty and give everybody good jobs and don't criminalize drugs and actually treat drugs like a health issue rather than a criminal issue, well, then how are the private prisons going to make money? If we actually invest money in the Black and brown and Latino communities and the Native American communities, well, then how are we going to fill our prison beds? You see how this works? And you buy that influence by donating to colleges to make sure that what Dr. Felber is teaching doesn't get taught. Let that be taught out in Berkeley or something like that. But we can't have that taught in Mississippi. We can't have that taught in Mississippi. They're scared. This is August. They got all this money in August. You know what was happening in June? Oh, Confederate statues were getting torn down in the George Floyd protests. They can't have that. And there was young white kids in Mississippi protesting in favor of Black Lives Matter, in favor of George Floyd, pulling down Confederate generals' statues in states like Mississippi. So they can't even, the old racist guard can't even bank on the institutional and intergenerational racism of white people anymore. They're like, oh no. So let's get rid of this professor. I wrote a big fat check to your university. I don't like this guy. Get rid of him. That's how it goes. The dean or whatever is, he's a golfing buddy with the thing. And then all of a sudden, he's hard to communicate with. You see how it works? But the boycott, we'll see what happens with the boycott. That's why general strikes and but this boycott seems performative. What's their step 2? Blah, blah, blah. This is what it takes. We just got to boycott stuff. We got to shut stuff down. Lean on companies, lean on them financially. The people who outrage at the Washington Redskins mascot. That name Redskin is an offensive name. People went after FedEx. FedEx said, oh man, we're going to take a hit on this. If everyone starts boycotting FedEx and, oh, FedEx supports racism, they don't want that public media nightmare. They don't need that shit. They don't want some hashtag ban FedEx trending. So they said, hey, Snyder, racist, sexist, creep owner of the Washington Redskins, you better change the name or we're pulling our $500 million stadium licensing deal. Oh, suddenly, look at that. The name got changed overnight. So boycotts and protests and forcing the vote, these big gestures work. Getting people motivated. So put pressure on University of Mississippi. Send them an email right now. Send the chairman, Dr. Wilson, she's the chairwoman of the history department. Yeah. Send them an email. Direct actions, folks. Boycotts. You were going to donate to University of Mississippi. Maybe you're an alumni or something. Don't give them money and write them a letter. I was going to donate, but now I'm not, because you're squashing critical thinking and you're supporting the private prison industry. So all we got is our voice and our leverage and voting with our dollars. All these people understand is money. All they care about is the donors. That's why this guy's getting let go. So you show them what you're going to do with your money. That's what a boycott does. Connect the dots, follow the money, folks. You follow the money, you connect the dots. Boop, 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 boop. Private prison money, firing a professor. Ding, 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 ding. Got it. Thanks for watching, folks. Like, share, subscribe, and shave your knuckles for justice. You're making Gotham great again. Boom. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please hit the like button, the subscribe button. Go to patreon.com/Graham Elwood and rockfin.com/Graham Elwood, where you can support the show. Also, I have a Bitcoin wallet, a Bitcoin Cash wallet, and an Ethereum wallet in the show notes. We're taking cryptocurrency. I have a Coinbase affiliation link. We're going to be getting on some other exchanges. So that's how you support the show. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. YouTube is unsubscribing us at an alarming rate. I have a PayPal button at grahamelwood.com. I even have a Venmo at Graham-Elwood. There's a lot of ways to support our show. We are getting crushed by YouTube. We've dipped under 73,000 subscribers because of YouTube. Thanks for supporting what we do.